I am going to be that proverbial pain in the ass. I'm going to be that person for others that I should have been for Mike, but I was too afraid to kick him off the show, say, go to rehab, that seat's always going to be here, because I was afraid that I was more afraid to lose my friend than keep him alive. I'm a little bit different now. I would rather you hate me. I will be that proverbial pain in the ass because I'd rather you hate me and be alive to hate me than be dead and transfer that pain to everybody else.
Kevin, welcome back.
Thank you, sir.
Good to see you again.
Yes.
Tell me what's going on in your world. You just went through something, didn't you?
Yeah, it's the funniest thing because you see somebody head on, and when you meet them where they're at and they're smiling, some smiles, they have this way of having a darkness behind them. And it's scary too, because when you run into the average person on the street, you see what they want you to see and you're not looking at the darkness. The last time I was on here, I went through my journey of how I overcame my suicide attempts and all the darkness in my life, and I was making headway and I was in such a good place. I felt good about myself. I felt good about finally having some sort of direction in my life. And, I started moving forward with that mission of really bringing some awareness to suicide, but not just bringing awareness, but actually having a plan on how to have people release the darkness.
It's a real serious problem with law enforcement.
It's worse than you think. Okay, so the average across the country out of 700,000 law enforcement officers, you're getting between 150 to 250 active members killing themselves. But one of the things that there's no metric on is how many retired guys are taking their lives. There is no statistic out there. There's vague statistics, but nobody really knows. And that's sort of the crux of where I'm at, So what happened was, while I was in group therapy, while I was healing, I met this guy who I've known for approximately 30 years. His name was Mike Falaise. And he had just had a shooting, and it was about a year after my shooting. He comes into group therapy, and I see that look on his face and that despondent look, and I recognize it right away. So I sort of just gravitated toward this guy, and Mike and I became real close. When group therapy sort of shut down because of lockdowns, I needed some sort of an outlet. So I started a podcast, right? Just like everybody else does. We start podcasts. But that was my way of having a group therapy. And I called it the Suffering Podcast because of what I went through. I believe suffering is a good thing. I believe suffering is a word that if you embrace it and you identify the problems, you're going to be able to get through it. So, I floundered around a bit. On episode 9, I have Mike in. He's a friend of mine, and he tells his story. And I'm like, wow. But the chemistry between us was so good that I invited him in, and I said, hey, Mike, why don't you come and co-host this show with me? And that's what we did. We co-hosted this show, and we allowed people to step into themselves and release the darkness and how they got through it, hoping that somebody would listen to it and sort of get a little nugget of information, a little roadmap on how to overcome all this adversity and this craziness in their life. And we were making headway. And Mike and I had many different adventures. We were such good friends. I considered him my brother. We would travel together. We would go on speaking engagements together. But I knew some darkness behind Mike. See, Mike and I had this thing. Whenever we were having a dark day, he was the person that I leaned on. He was the person I'd call up and say, hey, listen, I'm having a day. And he would sort of talk me through it. If he knew if he didn't hear from me in a couple days, hey, I better reach out. And I would do the same for him. He would call me and say, hey, listen, I'm having a moment, I'm having a day. And we would just sort of talk through it. Maybe we'd go out and get something to eat, whatever it may be. But we had each other to lean on. But I watched Mike's life on the back end sort of implode. I watched him, he went through a divorce. He was having some family troubles with his kids. He was drinking an enormous amount. He was doing a lot of unhealthy things, basically trying to mask that darkness. Mike loved being a police officer. He absolutely loved it, like we all did. And when he got that purpose taken away because he could no longer do that job because of post-traumatic stress, his life just sort of fell apart. But But we were doing all these great things. We were helping all these different people. We were making sure that nobody went through the same things we went through, but Mike was suffering in silence. So we go on, and I'm watching Mike just sort of fall down, and I'm thinking to myself, you know what? If I can just keep him involved in this show, if I can just make sure that he has something to anchor himself onto, that he's going to be okay and he's going to get through the darkness the same way that I got through the darkness. So show after show after show, we did this, and then afterwards we would get together, or we would go out somewhere, and I'd watch him just drink. Like at one point I said, bro, you got to drink some water, because it was just liquor. It was liquor all day long. But he was masking the pain. And he would come into the studio oftentimes inebriated. He would come into the studio just not in good shape. And I would call him up and I would say, hey, what's going on, man? What's going on? What I really wanted to do, I had people calling me on the back end too, saying, hey, listen, you better, he needs to get off the show. But my thinking was his personal life was imploding so bad that if I took him off the show, I'm taking away his last bastion of support. And I couldn't do that. I actually said to people on the phone saying, hey, you're right. And I think that you're on track here, but I can't do that. I can't take that away from him, because I'm afraid that he's going to have nothing left and he's going to take his life. Mike always used to say to me that he was never suicidal. But he also said, his exact words, I'm not suicidal because I'm too much of a pussy. But he said, if I didn't wake up in the morning, it wouldn't be such a bad thing. And I heard him say this over and over and over again, figuring that, you know what, he's just getting it out just like the rest of us. So in early May of 2024, we had been doing the show now at that time for about 4 years. And we were really making some head. We were making an impact. And I saw Mike just going further and further and further down. And before each show, we would do a little Instagram live, sort of just like a preview. And that particular night, Mike's standing right next to me, and we would just bounce off of each other, have some fun. And I had just lost my father-in-law. So I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about my wife. I'm making sure that she's okay. I'm preoccupied. The funeral is the next day. This is a Wednesday night. And that particular Instagram live was about loss, how to deal with loss. I was dealing with loss personally, so I thought it was an appropriate appropriate topic. And Mike says to me, and I've rewatched this Instagram live several times. Mike says to me, "Oh, there's going to be a lot of loss tonight." And I remember turning to the side and just sort of saying, you know, I didn't understand what he was saying. And I now went on with the Instagram live. We did the show. As a matter of fact, we did the show with a Soft White Underbelly alum, Seth Gale, episode 183, and it was a great show. Seth had gone through some really bad things. And now, one of the things about the studio we record in, the guest always parks in the back near us. For whatever reason, Seth parked up front. So Mike and I walk out to the back together, alone. And he's asking me, where's the funeral tomorrow for my father-in-law? Where's the funeral? And I said, it's this place in Nutley, New Jersey. It's this funeral home. Just go look it up. And he goes, well, what's the address? And I remember getting aggravated at him, going, just look it up. Just because I was aggravated. Just look it up. And he turns around. We're chatting for a couple minutes. And he looks at me right in the eye. Now, Mike and I always told each other we loved each other. So there's a couple of rules that I live by. You know, you want a happy life. It's not a real difficult metric to do that. It's be honest with people and tell the people around you that you love them. So Mike and I always told each other that hey, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. Almost as a goodbye. So we're standing in a parking stall, and I can see the parking stall in my head. Mike turns to me, and he is a broken individual at this point. And he looks at me and he goes, hey, Kev, you know I love you, brother. And I go, I know, I love you too, man. And gives me a hug, gets in his car, and he drives off. Now, almost immediately when I got in the car, I was getting phone calls from friends of mine who had watched the Instagram live. And they said, hey, man, something's wrong. Something's wrong, something's wrong. I'm like, no, I don't know, he's probably drinking or something like that. And like, something's wrong. I tried to call him and he didn't pick up. And I go home and I'm on the phone till about 11:30 at night. I wake up real early in the morning. I wake up at 3 a.m., so I have to get some sleep. At about 11:30 at night, I call it. I go to bed and off I go. The next day, I try to call Mike. I hadn't heard from him. I try to call him. I'm not getting any answer, but Mike is a creature of habit. Like, if you wanted to assassinate Mike, you could have found him in about 5 minutes. But I can't get in touch with him. I had some events going on that day, and I go to my events, and I'm still trying to call him, to the point where I'm reaching out to his girlfriend. One of the things with his girlfriend is he had recently broken up with his girlfriend that Monday. And I'm worried about him. I'm worried about the way he was on the show. I'm worried about his personal life. I'm just making sure that he has something, some form of support, because prior to this, like I told you before, Mike and I would lean on each other, and for the past month, it sort of dawned on me at that point. I'm like, hey, Mike hasn't reached out to me at all to tell me he's having a day or anything like that. And I know the guy's hurting. I know he's struggling. So I go to my events that day, and the next day, I'm on the phone with my friends. I'm like, look, I'm going to take a ride over his house or something. One of my friends tells me, just wait. We'll go tomorrow, which would have been Friday. We'll go tomorrow. All of us will go together, and we'll make sure that he's okay. I go to bed again at about 11:30 at night. I wake up at 3 in the morning, and I look at my phone, and I have 30 missed calls. I have a slew of text messages saying, call me right away. I get a call from his, call and a text messages from his brother. I get a call and a text message from a guy who's known him for 50 years. I get a call and a text messages from his ex-girlfriend. All these different things, and I'm like, it's that shock. I'm standing in my garage. And I make the first phone call, and I call his brother. And I'm like, hey, what's up? And I hear he's dead. He's dead. I know I cried, and I know I screamed out, but I don't think any voice came out of my mouth. I dropped to my knees on the hard concrete floor, and this pain came out in my heart that I don't think I've ever felt before. This pain of losing my best friend, my brother, my business partner. This pain of dropping the ball. I'm supposed to be the guy that's helping people through their mental issues and struggles. How did I not see this? That was right alongside of me all the time. All at once, there was feelings of sadness, there was feelings of anger, there was feelings of loneliness, there was feelings of just despondent despair that I don't know how to process. I walk upstairs, and my wife's still in bed. It's 3:30 in the morning. And I startle her awake. Now, this is a woman who's been through hell and back with me. And I look at her and I say, Mike killed himself. Mike killed himself. And I'm bawling, crying. Now I have to attack the day. Now, the type of person that I am, if I sit idle, it's just going to make things worse. So I do what I normally do. I actually went out for a run. And I don't think there was one step of that run where I wasn't bawling, crying, and I wasn't wailing, and I just didn't know what to do. I have to get I'm like, this is one of the worst things that's ever happened to me. I come to find out, after we recorded that night on Wednesday night, which was May 8th, when I saw him in the parking stall, I was the last person to see Mike Felice alive. In the next coming days, I have full knowledge from different sources. I know every move he made. I know every phone call he made. His last text message to his ex-girlfriend was, "I'm sorry I ruined your life." And that was at 12:30 a.m. on May 9th, 2024. By the time, On May 9th in the evening at 11:45, his ex-girlfriend goes into his apartment. He was living in a basement apartment. And my friend, my brother, and my business partner, the man who was closer to me than anybody else in my life, died alone in a basement from a self-inflicted single gunshot wound to the head. He was even kind enough to put a pillow over his face because police officers were real courteous to those people who have to come and clean up the crime scene as not to make a mess. I went to work that day and I don't remember anything. I don't remember anything about that day. I remember doing another Instagram Live to tell our audience, we had grown, a sizable audience at that point, and to tell the audience what happened. But I had to wait because his father, who was still alive, hadn't heard yet. I was in constant contact with his brother. And once his father was notified, I notified our audience. And on that Instagram Live, I just said, why couldn't he just say, I know he had the dark thoughts. I know they were here. I know they were present in the forefront of his mind. Why couldn't he just have the conscious decision to say, whatever I'm going to do, not today, not today. I'm going to wait for the sun to rise tomorrow. Because when the sun rises the next day, life looks completely different. You never realize that, as dark as things get, that sun inevitably, it's since the beginning of time, the sun has rose. But when you're in that spot, you don't think the sun's ever going to rise. You don't think anybody can understand what I'm going through. You don't think anybody is going to get it. You don't think that there's any hope. Because what happens, and I know this from personal experience, I know this from my own personal experience, when you're in that deep, dark place and you are truly suicidal, your peripheral vision is so narrow. On a good day, your peripheral vision is about here, okay? But when you're in a dark place, it closes down. So you don't see all the good things, all the people that care about you, all the people that love you. You don't see them sitting alongside. You don't see how much they're worried about you and how much they want you to succeed. All you do is you're sitting there and you're looking at this face in the mirror that you don't even recognize anymore. You're not sleeping. You're just looking at all the negative things in life. So your peripheral vision is here. And then you do what you do. And then you take your life. But here's what happens. So pain does not disappear. Pain is energy. Energy can neither be created or destroyed. It's just transferred. And when somebody takes their life, what happens to that pain is it gets transferred to everybody else. So while Mike's pain is over, everybody else feels the pain of his loss. There is not a day that goes by that I don't think about how much I miss my friend. And I've gone through all the different cycles of grief. I miss him. I laugh at the times we spent together and the adventures that we have and the moments that we shared. And then I get really angry. I'm like, you selfish son of a bitch. You left me here all alone. We were supposed to do this thing together. We were supposed to do this as a team, as a unit, for as long as we wanted to do it. But you checked out because you thought that nobody would understand. When all you had to do was say, not today. I'm going to deal with this shit tomorrow. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. So while Mike's peripheral vision was here, after somebody kills themselves, your peripheral vision opens up, your aperture opens up so wide that you can't even see your hands on the side of your face because you see all the collateral damage that suicide brings. You see how many people are hurt. At his funeral, which was an open casket, I didn't know when I walked in there, and I got there early with the family, I didn't know whether I was going to break down crying or whether I was going to jump on the casket and start punching the body. I know it sounds insane. I know it sounds crazy, but that was the mix of emotions. And when I saw him, I was inconsolable. And one of the hard things for anybody around, I'm a pretty stoic type of person. And one of the hardest things is to watch a grown man lose it emotionally. And I don't think the funeral was about 4 hours, and then the next day, and I don't think I had a dry eye the entire time. You know, people will show up, police funerals are a whole thing in themselves. People will show up in uniform, and they'll start telling all these different stories, and they'll tell a lot of the good things, but I know the truth. I know the darkness that's underneath that soft white underbelly. And there is a lot of darkness in there. So when we're moving forward and we're trying to make a dent and we're trying to do the right thing, every once in a while, and I'm very guilty of this, we have to look to our right and we have to look to our left, and we make sure that we're not leaving anybody behind. Because one of the things about suicide, especially if somebody close to you has taken their life, you're going to know this all too well. The implicit guilt that I feel for leaving my brother behind. I failed him. But you need to have a plan. Don't just say you're an advocate, you're somebody who wants to just change this stigma, somebody to change all these bad things that are happening, and you just want to bring awareness. Well, guess what? If you want to bring awareness to suicide, we're aware. It's not going away. Have a plan. So you know what my plan is? I am going to be that proverbial pain in the ass. I'm going to be that person for others that I should have been for Mike, but I was too afraid to kick him off the show, say, go to rehab, that seat's always going to be here, because I was afraid that I was more afraid to lose my friend than keep him alive. I'm a little bit different now. I would rather you hate me. I will be that proverbial pain in the ass because I'd rather you hate me and be alive to hate me than be dead and transfer that pain to everybody else. I don't care what's going on. If I know you have that hate for me in my right now, if I'm being a pain in the ass to you, or I'm just on you all the time, or whatever it may be, I'd rather you have that and be alive to hate me than be dead and not have any chance of redemption. Because eventually I believe that people will come around if they can just wait out the darkness for just a little bit longer. Say to themselves, just whatever I'm going to do, whatever I'm thinking about right now, whatever's going on in my brain, let's not do this today. Let's wait for tomorrow. And then deal with the thoughts tomorrow. So on May 9th, 2024, a little piece of me died. But in that void, what has come around is a growth of a new mission to make sure that I don't ever have the ability to have that implicit guilt of leaving somebody behind. I'm not going to do it anymore. I refuse. I refuse to be that person, because this feeling that I've been feeling for the past year and a half, it sucks.
This happens so often with law enforcement, doesn't it?
You know, I encourage people through social media. I'm very reachable. And I have a list of people, probably, I don't know, 30 to 50 people that I will check on regularly. People I see that are in darkness. And if you don't know who else to reach out to, if the suicide prevention lines aren't helping, if you think that they won't understand, I understand it from two sides now. I understand it from the side of the person who was going to do it. I've had about 8 attempts. I also understand it from the person who has witnessed it, from somebody who is as close can be to them, take their life and the void that's left behind. I encourage you just to reach out to me. I'm on all social media.
What's the name of your show?
My show is The Suffering Podcast. You can find, I'm on Instagram at Real Kevin Donaldson, my website. There's about 100 different ways to reach out to me. I have resources. I have people who genuinely care, who have been through something very similar. There's a way out. Trust me, there's a way out. And the thing about when there's a way out, when you get through it, I said this on the first one and I stick to it. When you get through the darkness, there is some real beauty on the other side, because you will look at life with a completely different face and brand new eyes. You just got to be strong enough to get through it. And some of us aren't. That's why, there's a story I once heard. Guy's in a hole. And person passes by and he says, please help me, I'm in a hole, I can't get out. And the person says, well, I can call somebody and help you get out. He's like, okay, but that's not really helping me. Religious man walks by, says, Father, I need help, I can't get out of this hole. Father says, I can't help you out of the hole, but I can pray for you. Here's where I sit now. If I'm walking by and I see somebody in a hole, I'm going to jump in that hole with them. And then the person will inevitably turn to me and say, hey, well, that's great and all, but now we're both stuck in the hole. I'm going to look them right in the eye and I'm going to say, yeah, we are both in a hole, but I know the way out. I've been here before. Just take my hand. We're going to get out of this together. So I'll always be willing to jump in that hole with somebody so they don't feel the same thing I feel. But I'm going to close with that same word that he said to me, the last words he said to me. They ring in my head every single night before I go to sleep and every day when I wake up. It's like, Mike, I love you, brother.
All right, Kevin. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
So sorry.
When I was designing the first Soft-White Underbelly book, I realized that there were so many great portraits that weren't going to make it into that book. They just wouldn't fit. And once I saw how well that first book sold, I knew I'd have to design a second book. This second book is finally ready to ship. Like the first one, this book has a collection of some of the best portraits from Soft-White Underbelly, accompanied by a quote from that person's interview. This book features another group of Rebecca portraits, as well as a collection of color images of the Whitaker family, and plenty of others. You can order yours for $125 or $150 for a signed copy at softwhiteunderbelly.org. Again, like the first book, once this book is sold out, I will not be printing more of them. The portraits are what Soft-White Underbelly is all about, and these two books contain the best of all that work. Thank you for watching.